I'm Derek.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Do it again.
I'm Derek.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm Alex.
Jake.
Brooks.
Mayday Parade. So this tour that we're about to start is celebrating our third album, which is our self-titled album. It's called Mayday Parade. It technically turned 10 last year, but just a few months ago, really. So it's the 11-year anniversary of that tour. We're gonna be playing the entire album from front to back. There's a handful of songs that we've never played live ever off that album before. And it's super exciting. It's it's an album that we love a lot, and it's, in general, it's one of the kind of fan favorite albums throughout the years, and it's gonna be an incredible time. We've done one tour during COVID towards the end of last year. Obviously, there was a lot of touring that we had planned and tried to do, but had to push back and cancel because of everything. Luckily, we were able to play every single show on that tour. A lot of us did get COVID on the road, and we had to kind of do the best we could to play without certain members.
Quarantined in hotels for a while.
Right, people would stay back in hotels, and the tour would go on, and crew members getting sick and everything. So it definitely kind of adds a whole nother layer of stress. We also just sort of tried to approach, the way we do things to try and make it as safe as possible, and everyone kind of do their best to avoid large groups and stay in the bus and things like that, which obviously is sometimes people are at venues with hundreds or thousands of people, and for some people it's tough to. But yeah, we're thankful that it's even able to happen, really, because we went almost 2 years without playing a single show other than a couple of virtual shows.
So we were recording our newest album during COVID, and that sort of impacted that as well. Normally we spend like 2 months or whatever in the studio, but with this we kind of came and went, did 3 weeks in the studio, went back home, did another 3 weeks. It's an unusual way of doing it for us, but due to the circumstances, that's what made the most sense.
The virtual shows, I feel like were cool in the sense
glad
that
they happened rather than not.
Right, exactly. It was better than nothing, and I kind of felt the same way about. I also watched a decent amount of virtual shows from different bands, and of course, nothing is really gonna feel like the real thing. But it was nice, both as a viewer watching virtual shows and performing them. It's nice to be able to do something, I guess.
It's one of the few ways you can stay relevant. If you can't tour and you can't do much, it's one of the only things you can kind of give your fans while you're, not touring. So.
Yeah, we're definitely kind of scaling up with the lights and kind of the props that we have on stage. And a lot of our approach to how we're going to sound and running on kind of a global clock, if that makes sense. Like the show should be a lot more cohesive, or the most cohesive than we've ever done before. There's a lot of new exciting elements that we're using and incorporating into our set that I think we're all looking forward to.
Yeah, well, to begin with, it means a lot it's our 7th album, and that's pretty insane. We started this band in 2005. It's been a long time, and it's pretty wild that we've made it this far, and I don't think any of us
still around.
Yeah, I don't think any of us would have thought that it would be able to continue for this amount of time. And there's not a lot of bands that make it to their 7th album, so that means a lot, and I think, for the most part, it's just kind of like many of our albums, it's kind of a continuation of just what we've kind of feel like we've built, and trying to take it a little bit further, trying to branch into some new territory and get a little bit outside of our comfort zone. I think the fact that we wrote and recorded this album during the pandemic, influenced it in some ways, and just sort of dealing with, that whole stressful situation. but at the same time also kind of having a hopeful outlook towards the future. Yeah.
I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I feel like back when we were in high school, the Tallahassee music scene was very good. Like there was a lot of actual live venues and a lot of bands, and there was always a show going on. Whereas nowadays, most of those venues have been converted into like clubs where it's more just DJs or just some sort of Spotify playlist playing. So I don't know if there's not really a lot of live music currently happening in Tallahassee. Derek's the only one that still lives here currently, so he's probably better knowledge of that. But.
Yeah, I mean it's changed a lot from the time that we started this band, and yeah, as Cabbage was saying, there used to be a pretty close knit group of all kinds of bands and a lot of great bands that would practice in the same places and play all kinds of shows together, and it was really an amazing thing. And obviously we're also not as in touch with that as we're gone a lot more and older now, but I think that a lot of that has changed a lot, and I don't know of a lot of live music that kind of happens in the same way.
Not for local artists. I'm sure there's a lot of live music for traveling artists coming in, bigger artists, but local bands I don't really hear much.
I think the university too, I feel like there's a difference between people like us that were born and raised here and grew up here, and our scene. It was all kind of like local kids that grew up, whereas I know that the music school has tons of people that play in bands, but it feels like there's a big separation between, at least when we were growing up, a big separation between what was happening for kids on campus that came up from South Florida or whatever, and kids that grew up here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it's been cool. Everyone's always been super kind and welcoming, and it's nice to have a place, in town. Everyone has, family and friends here and whatnot, and to be able to rehearse here is great. And I feel like you guys have updated a lot of it in here throughout the years.
Yeah, over the past 3 years, this place has really turned around a lot. So.
Right. Yeah.
There's not a lot of places that we can go in Tallahassee, so it's amazing that there's a spot. We're either rehearsing here or at the Moon now. Yeah, it's nice that it's available.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly important. I think music is very powerful, and it's just helpful in so many different ways. And especially, I think that, for most people, when they're in their, and this isn't, necessarily the case always, but for most people when they're teenagers or they're younger and you've got a lot of things going on, a lot of different emotions and everything, music can just be therapeutic and obviously, we're all grateful that we started playing music at a young age, and have been able to make a career out of this. We're all in our 30s now, and still doing it, and it's been an amazing life,
I agree. I think it's important for the youth. I think music influences a lot of our, say teenage years, like influences who you are as a person, like what you listen to really kind of defines like who you become. In a weird way, like if I wasn't listening to this style of music that we're playing now, which is, I got into that in high school, but before that I was just listening to normal radio, whatever. I didn't really know about sort of the underground pop rock music. And once I found that kind of steered my fashion, it steered my taste in other things. I started hanging out with friend group, yeah, all sorts of things. So I think it really influences a lot more than just music. I think it influences so much about your personal taste as a person.
Yeah, MySpace had, I think, a lot to do with, things with our band. I feel like did kind of start rather, quickly, and we were kind of up and running pretty fast. And I think that there's a combination of factors. One, that we all played in a bunch of different bands. And then once we started this one, it was kind of like taking all the things we had learned and putting all of that into effect right away. But yeah, MySpace was the big social media platform back then, and one of the first big social media platforms. And
I think it was one of the first platforms you could even upload your music on for people to listen to.
Right. Yeah. It was definitely a new thing at the time, and yes, as soon as we recorded our first 2 songs, we put them up, and I forget when it was exactly, but just a few months into us being a band, I remember there being a day that we got over 1,000 plays in one day on MySpace, and that was a huge deal at the time for us. And we all called each other, and we're like, we just got over 1,000 plays like today. Like, how crazy is that? And when we followed Warped Tour in 2006 and sold CDs, you'd run into, it wasn't super common, but I remember us being in California and talking to someone who had listened to us on MySpace, and that was pretty mind-blowing that we'd never been to we never played California, but we were out there, meeting people and selling CDs, and here was somebody who was, a fan of our band. And
across the United States, music is
so just in general, I think it helped a whole lot. Yeah.
Well, just to add too, MySpace was also how we got noticed by our first label.
Mm-hmm. Right.
At the time, though, Jake's referring to Fearless. One of the A&R agents there. It's actually kind of funny. He found us on a top 8. We were in the top 8 of another band he was checking out, and he saw our photo, our like profile picture on that, and was like, "That's a weird photo or an interesting photo." Clicked on it, and that's how he kind of found us. But in that time frame, we were being approached by at least 2 or 3 other labels, and we were in the middle of selling CDs on Warped Tour on our own. We had printed the CDs ourselves. We had made the record on our own with our own money. So I think it felt really good because I feel like we all kind of had a sense of like, we didn't feel desperate. We felt,
options.
Yeah, we had options, and we even were kind of like, what do we need? We were able to evaluate like, what do we really need from a label? Rather than the horror stories that you hear now, and we certainly heard that back then, when you hear bands that are young and desperate to be signed by anyone, and so they take the first terrible offer they're given without thinking it through.
I think a little bit of both. I mean, like there's things. The newer songs are fun to play just because they are new and fresh and kind of exciting. But then obviously there's some of those older like staple songs that are sort of like the hits or the favorites,
and the crowd into it.
Right, the energy is usually a lot more intense, for some of those. And so I think being able to, I wouldn't want to do just one or the other.
You got to get out on the road. You definitely can't just play in town. You have to kind of start to venture out and kind of learn the business that way, and learn from other bands that you're playing with. The big part of it for us was being able to draw in our hometown and then be given the shows where the regional and national acts would be coming in. We would be the support. Then we were like the little kids who would pester them with questions and kind of understand how they were doing it and growing from there. And after learning some of the things that they were doing, we started replicating those by going out on the road. And I guess when I started out with saying you got to go out on the road, it's because you have to be somewhat of a sufficient business and have somewhat of a business mind with it, to become truly successful with it. It's not just like fun.
Right. Record labels want to see that you're going to put in the effort. They don't want to just say, "Oh, this band has never left town," or even tried to tour, because it doesn't give them a lot of faith that you're going to be able to actually do it for an extended period of time. So if you do that, get out on the road and show that you can do that, and that you're not going to fall apart during the first week, that gives them a lot more faith in you.
Just that's the best way to learn, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. Get out there and just kind of do it and figure it out. And like that's what we, when I mentioned us being in a bunch of different bands before this one, there was so much that we learned from doing that and doing some touring in those bands. And eventually when we started this band, we felt like we had a pretty good idea of like what to do from day one, from kind of all that experience that we collectively had.
But also similarly in a way, it's utilizing your social media as things platforms like TikTok and Reels now, and trying to find creative ways to get your whether it's your voice out there or your music out there, or whatever. And I know times have changed from when we started touring versus where we are now.
Right.
But in a way, they're kind of similar in the sense that MySpace was our social media platform at the time that we utilized to get our music out there.
Right. It's like exploring every avenue that's available to you, because literally every band has a different success story on how they got to that point. But I think what's most important is that you would utilize all of that's available to you, and something's going to work for you. It's meant to be.
Definitely a common thread, I think, through all this is that you can't expect other people to make it happen for you. You're going to have to take the initiative. And it's kind of scary because a lot of times, you hope that other people will kind of guide you, and there's almost like a mentor or some sort of relationship like that you can kind of be guided into the correct path to get success. But with anything like music or anything in the arts like that, you really have to take your own initiative in your own hand and figure out what works and what doesn't. Throw everything at the wall, see what sticks, and go with that.
And try to get a good recording too. That helps.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He's smart. This will be how I remember to check it out.
Give me a positive.